Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we grab a whole stack of sources, articles, reports, you name it, and boil them down to get you up to speed fast. Today, we're diving into something that, honestly, sounds like it's straight out of a movie, science fiction stuff. But it's very, very real, and it affects, well, pretty much all of us. Think about this quote for a second. It's from an Israeli human rights lawyer, Itay Manmak. He said, "Today, you're able to identify and stop surveillance of the next Nelson Mandela before he even knows he's Nelson Mandela." Chilling, right? That really sets the stage for today's deep dive. We're looking into the pretty murky world of global cyber surveillance, and we're focusing specifically on those really powerful, often controversial Israeli tech companies. You know, the ones whose tools are kind of reshaping global politics and hitting individuals hard. So our mission, using all these sources we've gathered, is to unpack this whole landscape. Some people are calling it the insecurity industry. We want to figure out not just what these tools do, but who's using them, why are they so popular, and maybe most importantly, what does it all mean for human rights, for democracy, and, yeah, for your own privacy online? Okay, let's get into it. NSO Group, the proliferation of Pegasus. Right, let's start with the name everyone probably knows, or maybe knows of, NSO Group.
Yeah, NSO, founded, 2010? By Shalev Julio and Omri Lavi, Israeli intelligence veterans.
And their main product, Pegasus, the name itself is pretty evocative, isn't it?
It is. They apparently chose it to suggest a Trojan horse flying through the air and into a mobile phone. Captures that stealthy infiltration idea.
Sneaky. And, right from the beginning, there were some, let's say, interesting connections. The first big deal reportedly involved Elliot Broidy, a convicted U.S. felon.
That definitely sets a certain tone, doesn't it?
It does. It suggests, maybe, that this wasn't purely about legitimate law enforcement from day one.
Exactly. It hints at the kind of circles it might move in, the clients it could attract. It's tangled up in some ethically murky areas right from the jump.
That context is, really important, and it makes you look differently at how Pegasus was used, especially somewhere like Mexico.
Oh, Mexico. A huge case study.
NSO and the government there kept saying, it's just for fighting cartels and terrorists, but the reality seems very different. What makes Mexico stand out as this, brutal testing ground?
Well, first, the sheer scale of use is pretty staggering. But also, who was targeted? You have the story Griselda Triana. Her husband, Javier Valdez Cardenas, a journalist, was murdered by cartel just 10 days later.
10 days?
Yeah. She gets these weird texts. Turns out there were attempts to get Pegasus onto her phone.
Why her?
She believes they were trying to get info related to her husband's investigations. In her case, it just flat out contradicts the official line that it's only for bad guys. As the forces say, it proves this claim is false.
And Mexico spent a fortune on this stuff.
Huge amounts. U.S. $15 million by 2013 alone. Former President Calderon apparently even called Pegasus his Christmas present.
Wow. And it wasn't just cartel figures they were after.
Not at all. The target list included other journalists, like Cecilio Pineda-Botero, who was actually killed not long after his number showed up on a potential target list.
That's horrifying.
It is. Plus, advocates for a soda tax, believe it or not. And even dozens of people connected to the current president, López Obrador, and his family. It was widespread.
And there's this other layer, too. Mexico's voting at the UN seemed to shift around this time, became less critical of Israeli policies.
That's right. And it points to this broader strategic angle.
How so?
Well, it looks like NSO isn't just a private company doing its thing. It seems to work hand in hand with the Israeli state. Using this tech helps achieve foreign policy aims.
Like a diplomatic tool.
Exactly. Pegasus becomes this alluring carrot, Offer it to potential allies, maybe get some favorable votes at the UN, especially regarding sensitive issues like the occupation, surveillance tech as a bargaining chip.
So it's statecraft through spyware, essentially. And how formal is that link? I read the Israeli Ministry of Defense, the MOD, has significant control.
Yeah, apparently almost complete control. They can reportedly veto who buys NSO, who owns it, even what NSO says publicly through this body called Malmob.
So Israel gets diplomatic leverage, UN votes. What else?
It's been crucial for building relationships, especially with countries that maybe weren't traditional allies. Think about the Gulf states, Bahrain, the UAE, Saudi Arabia. Offering NSO's tech was reportedly part of that normalization process. There's even that story about MBS, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, demanding Pegasus access be turned back on.
That really highlights the stakes. And you mentioned a former Israeli official, Eli Pinko.
Yes, the former head of the Defense Export Control Agency. He put it very bluntly. He basically framed it as a choice. It's either the civil rights in some country or Israel's right to exist.
That is quite a justification. Stark.
It really lays bare the perceived dilemma from their side.
And this tech went everywhere. The client list reads like a rogues gallery of dictatorships, sometimes UAE, Panama, Kenya, Turkey.
And often states with, let's say, questionable democratic records. Morocco was accused of targeting critics, even allegedly President Macron of France. Hungary's Viktor Orban using it against opponents, journalists.
The human cost must be immense. We talked about Mexico, but what about other individuals caught in this?
It's devastating. Look at India. There's a lawyer, Nahal Singh Rathod. His phone got hit with Pegasus, likely because he was defending activists.
What was his biggest fear?
That someone would plant incriminating evidence on his phone. Which isn't paranoia, it actually happened to others in the same case.
Yeah.
If this was all happening during that period the media called the Modi-Netanyahu bromance.
Right, and the Togo situation.
Also chilling. Farida Nabarema, an activist against the Nasingbe dictatorship there. They discovered Pegasus on activists' phones after realizing the regimes seemed to know their private plans, things discussed on WhatsApp.
Leading to arrests.
Arrests, torture. Citizen Lab confirmed Pegasus. It caused panic. People had to completely change how they communicated, assuming they were always being watched. And Togo, it's worth noting, has a close relationship with Israel and tends to vote accordingly at the UN.
Then there's the Khashoggi affair. Saudi Arabia. NSO's role there was heavily scrutinized.
Deeply implicated. Accused of being an accessory to Jamal Khashoggi's murder. There's evidence his wife, his fiancé, other associates, their phones were compromised by Pegasus before and after he was killed.
And his friend, Omar Abdulaziz.
Another Saudi dissident. His phone was hacked too. And after that, his friends, his family back in Saudi Arabia were rounded up, imprisoned.
And trying to hold NSO accountable.
Extremely difficult. Abdulaziz's lawyer faced gag orders in Israeli courts when they tried to sue NSO.
So, with all these documented abuses, what does accountability even look like in this space? It seems so slippery.
It really is. NSO's co-founder, Shelov Julio, he always falls back on saying they built this company to save life. He dismisses the criticism as just the price of doing business.
Or blames others.
Yeah, he's blamed Qatar or BDS, the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement for stirring up trouble. But, the U.S. government did take a step.
The Biden administration.
Right. In late 2021, they put NSO on the Commerce Department's entity list.
What does that mean, practically?
It restricts U.S. companies from doing business with them. The administration accused NSO of enabling foreign governments to maliciously target journalists, activists, dissidents. Pretty strong statement.
But wasn't there some pushback on that, or at least questions about U.S. motives?
Oh, definitely. Critics pointed out the hypocrisy. The U.S. develops its own incredibly powerful surveillance tools. The FBI itself had even tested NSO's products.
So, was it really about human rights or something else?
That's the debate. Some argue it was less about protecting dissidents and maybe more about an Israeli company becoming too powerful, sort of encroaching on American technological supremacy. Bit of geopolitical competition mixed in.
Interesting. And how did people in Israel react to all this?
It was mixed. On one hand, a lot of pride in the startup nation, the high-tech success story, but then massive outrage when it came out that Pegasus was allegedly used domestically against Israeli citizens. That hit differently, too. Beyond Pegasus, a wider cyber surveillance industry.
Okay, so NSO gets a lot of the attention, but it's crucial to remember they're not the only players in town, right? There's a whole industry out there.
Absolutely. NSO is just the, maybe, most visible tip of the iceberg. We should talk about Celebrite.
Celebrate. Another Israeli company. They seem to get less heat than NSO, though.
They do. That lawyer we mentioned earlier, Itay Mack, he points out that Celebrite's effect is the same for activists as NSO's tools, even if they operate more under the radar.
Why is that? Why less scrutiny?
A big part of it seems to be how their tech is classified. Celebrite started out differently, more consumer tech in the 90s, then pivoted hard into mobile phone hacking for law enforcement. Big profits there. They even had this PR campaign, Heroes Behind the Heroes.
Okay, but the classification.
Right. Critically, their products are often classified as dual-use civilian services.
Dual use, meaning?
Meaning they have both civilian and potential military or security applications. But that classification often means they bypass the stricter export controls and government oversight that companies like NSO, classified as weapons or defense tech, might face. It's a loophole.
A massive loophole, sounds like, which lets this tech spread more easily.
Exactly. It allows powerful surveillance tools to proliferate globally with much less scrutiny. It basically creates this parallel track for cyber tools, largely unchecked.
And their client list, despite flying under the radar, it's not exactly clean, is it?
Not at all. Sources list clients like Russia, the Philippines under Duterte and his violent war on drugs, Bangladesh's Rapid Action Battalion known for abuses, Ethiopia, Indonesia.
Indonesia used it for what?
Reportedly for targeting the gay community and political opponents. Also Venezuela, Saudi Arabia. The list goes on.
And they sell heavily in the U.S. too, right? To police forces.
Oh, yeah. Extensive use by U.S. federal and local law enforcement. One report mentioned their tools being used hundreds of thousands of times by U.S. agencies between 2015 and 2020 to break into encrypted phones.
So how do they respond when challenged about selling to regimes with poor human rights records?
It often sounds quite similar to NSO, actually. They'll announce they're withdrawing from certain countries like Russia and Belarus. They set up ethics advisory committees. But the core business model continues.
So NSO, Celebrate, it really paints a picture of a much bigger ecosystem. You called it a private Mossad ecosystem earlier. What else is out there?
It's a whole network, really. You've got firms like Black Cube.
Black Cube, what's their story?
Also founded by former Israeli intelligence officers. They're more like private investigators using intelligence techniques, famously hired by Harvey Weinstein, though that backfired. They reportedly gathered intel on Obama administration officials involved in the Iran nuclear deal.
Wow. Any other examples?
They worked for Joseph Kabila in the DRC, spied on an anti-corruption prosecutor in Romania, worked with Orban's allies in Hungary to smear NGOs. They even got banned from Facebook for using fake profiles.
Okay, so that's Black Cube. Who else?
There was Psy Group. They were funded partly by American donors, operated globally. They apparently pitched services to the Trump campaign in 2016 to influence the election.
Seriously?
That's what reports indicate. They also monitored supporters of the BDS movement in the U.S. They eventually shut down amid investigations.
This is wild. It just keeps going.
It does. There's Verint Systems, another big player, selling interception tech to places like South Sudan, Azerbaijan, Indonesia. There's Intellexa, run by Tal Dillian, who became notorious for demonstrating hacking tools from a van.
A hacking van? Like in the movies?
Pretty much, yeah. And then you have firms like Dark Matter in the UAE, which hired former Israeli intelligence talent and was behind that spying app called Totalk.
Totalk, I remember that. It looked like WhatsApp, but was reportedly vacuuming up user data for Emirati intelligence.
Exactly. So yeah, NSO is just one part of this sprawling, interconnected, often very opaque industry. 3. The unregulated Wild West, implications, and the path forward.
Which brings us back to that term, the insecurity industry. Edward Snowden had a pretty blunt take on it.
He did. He said its sole purpose is the production of vulnerability. Selling tools to countries that, as he put it, desperately crave the tools of oppression, but sorely lack the sophistication to produce them domestically.
That's a powerful indictment. What's the fundamental problem with this whole setup, this unregulated market?
Well, Ron Dybert from Citizen Lab at the University of Toronto, he calls the people involved a transnational class of gangsters. He argues they're just creating these endless lucrative business opportunities that directly undermine accountability and help prop up dictatorships.
And the core issue is the lack of oversight.
Precisely. It operates largely in the shadows. There's very little public scrutiny or effective regulation. And crucially, the market incentives are all wrong. They actually reward creating insecurity, finding flaws, rather than fixing them. Our own devices become the battleground.
And it seems like even if you shut down one company like NSO, the demand isn't going away.
No, the demand from governments is still there. And the tech adapts. Experts like Bill Martzak worry that as phones get more secure, hackers will just shift focus.
To what?
Smart devices in our homes. Turning on cameras, microphones, and smart speakers, maybe hacking connected fridges, toasters, even cars. The potential attack surface is huge.
That's deeply unsettling. So given this adaptability, this demand, what can actually be done? What's the path forward here?
It raises that huge question, doesn't it? How do we manage these incredibly powerful digital tools ethically? How do we ensure they aren't just exploited?
Are there any concrete proposals?
Yes. People are trying. David Kaye, who used to be the UN Special Rapporteur on freedom of expression, he's suggested a few things, maybe an international code of conduct, though he admits it probably wouldn't be legally binding.
So limited teeth.
Potentially.
Yeah.
He also talks about stronger government regulation, maybe something modeled on arms control treaties, like the one banning landmines.
A treaty for spyware.
Something like that. Or even more drastically, he's called for a global moratorium. Basically, a complete halt on selling or transferring this kind of surveillance tech until we figure out strong, enforceable rules.
And Snowden, what's his take?
Snowden goes further. He argues we should just ban the commercial trade in these hacking tools altogether, take the profit motive out of it.
Eliminate the market.
Exactly. And another key piece is legal liability, making the companies that sell these tools legally responsible for the harm they cause.
How would that help?
The idea is that a few major court victories against these surveillance corporations could send a powerful message. It might force them, and the people working for them, to think twice. Make it morally clarifying, as one source put it. Outro.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We've gone through this really complex world where, state interests, private companies, and huge human rights issues all collide, all driven by this booming cyber surveillance industry, much of it originating in Israel, but now completely global.
Yeah, and we've seen how tools like Pegasus, like Celebrate's tech, they're sold with the justification of fighting crime and terrorism. But the reality, again and again, is that they end up targeting journalists, activists, lawyers, political opponents, anyone deemed inconvenient.
Impacting free speech, privacy, people's actual physical safety. And that line you mentioned from the activists in Togo, people just got used to the new reality. That's just terrifying.
It really is. And this isn't just abstract geopolitics we're talking about. It's what some call a digital infection. It targets individuals, yes, but also entire networks of people working together, collaborating for change. It undermines accountability everywhere.
So thinking about you, our listener, in this world that's clearly becoming more and more surveilled, what does this all mean? Is just adapting, just getting used to being watched online? Is that really our only choice? Or can we somehow push back against the system where, as the sources say, market forces push insecurity?
It's a tough question.
It really makes you think about how connected our phones, our devices are to this massive, global, largely unregulated industry, and maybe what responsibility we all have, just as citizens who know about this now, to push for something better, a more secure, more just digital future, something to definitely